Producers Hangout.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Producers Hangout, episode 33. Today we have special guest Justin Myracks of Altruist.com, also a sound designer with Native Instruments, and has a pretty extensive portfolio of things that he's done that you might find of interest. Today we've also got Mike of thepadbangers.com with us, and also Upright of SoundCloud. Upright, really, right? I got that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and he'll go as Bryce, and we've got Mike, who also goes as Silent Cypher. So we all have our interesting little side names. Let's talk about Justin's side name here, Altruist. Justin, before we dive too deep into everything, let's talk a little bit about the background of how you got started. Let's kind of start at the beginning, and we'll work our way towards what you're doing now. Can you tell everybody out there just a little bit about how you got into what you're doing now?
Well, yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on the show, Ken. I really appreciate it. And yeah, man, it's been a long journey. I started doing music production around 2001, so I'm not like that old as far as the production game goes, but I've seen a lot of things over the years. So I got in doing music production around 01. By about 03, I started doing some collaboration with some guys around my campus. I went to UC Irvine for computer engineering, but I was kind of like just doing the music production thing as a hobby. And as I was collaborating with folks, I got linked up with some people from Yamaha Corporation, which is actually maybe about 20 miles away from the campus that I went to. So when I got hooked up with them, they were looking for some like hip hop producers at the time to give them some advice on some new keyboards that they were working on. And I happened to be just in the right place at the right time. You know, I always say it was like just God had me in the right place at the right time. So, I was able to link up with them and start giving them some feedback on some of the new projects. At that time, I didn't know the project would be the Motif ES Rack, but I gave them some feedback on that, and then they looked for a demo producer at the time for the Motif ES Rack, and they came back to me and was like, hey, would you like to do like a hip-hop R&B-ish demo for the Motif ES Rack? And I was like, well, of course, and I was still really young in music, but at the same time, I was confident enough to be able to do it. So I did that, and that ended up being like my first project for Yamaha, was doing the Motif ES Rack hip-hop demo. So you can go in there now and listen to it as a factory content demo. But that was like the start of my relationship with Yamaha. And a couple years later, around 2005, they came back and was like, hey, we're looking to expand our drum library for the Motif line, and they offered me a opportunity to do some sound libraries work for the Yamaha Motif. At that time, it was the not the XF, but the one prior to that. And I was like, yeah, let's go for it. I did some drum sounds for them. I started. I already had my own drum sounds that I had been making over the years because I had been recording a lot of stuff, and just by virtue of the stuff that I was using in my production, I had to be really resourceful because there wasn't a lot of places to go to get sounds back then. You had a couple guys out there, but for the most part, if you really wanted something that sounded like original, you had to be creative. So, I was making sounds, and I put a lot of those sounds into the Motif, and that was around 05. By around 07, I was looking to start doing some more work as far as the film and TV industry goes. So I got linked up with a music publisher out here, and I started submitting a lot of my music that was kind of like on my hard drive, not doing anything, and they started giving me a lot of good placements, and it just started to really materialize into something that I can do as a side venture to the whole sound design thing I was doing. And I did that for several years, and by the time like around 2009 came, I started to venture out to like some of these conferences that were going on the West Coast. So like Sean Money Excel used to have this conference called the One Stop Shop Conference. And at that conference, he had like groups like iStandard, and he had a lot of his producer friends come out and give like a whole bunch of presentations and just a whole bunch of like useful information about being in the music industry as a music producer. And they also had some vendors there, and one of the vendors happened to be Native Instruments. And you know, when I went to One Stop Shop, I wasn't interested so much in like getting placements or with some of the A&Rs and whatnot. I came with my resume and my sound design portfolio already, and I gave it to the guys at Native Instruments, and once they had a chance to listen to it and we started talking, I started working with them as a contractor actually. So I was doing audio demos for some of their products, like I did stuff for their core libraries, and I did some stuff for a couple of the Scarby basses. Fast forward a couple months later, they decided to open up a position for sound design in the Los Angeles office, and they offered me an opportunity to interview for it. And the rest has been history since then, because I took that position in '09, and I've been one of the lead sound designers on the machine, as far as the factory library goes, and also doing things for like the iMachine library. I did a good portion of the iMachine library, and also projects like George Duke Soul's Treasures for Contact, and Battery 4 factory library was a big one that I worked on. So I've been really active at Native Instruments for the past 6 years, just working on whatever I can get my hands on, whatever makes sense, because I'm like inspired by everything, and I'm not just limited to drums. I do keyboards, and keyboards I would say would be my bread and butter actually. Drums is kind of like my second in line of my favorites as far as sound design goes. So I try to do a lot, man. So that's just a brief history of me as a sound designer producer.
I think I want to say I probably met you about 4 or 5 years back. It was probably about the first time I started talking with you. And back then, I really remember a lot of the F major YouTube videos. And at that time, you were still very new to a lot of what you were doing, but you were still being very helpful to a lot of other producers out there. You were putting up videos of more than just playing. A lot of the time, this was at a point when YouTube and beat making was kind of just starting to kind of combine. So you were seeing cats like Booney Mayfield, and a few other people, Knock and myself and a few other people were kind of just starting to put out these slightly more than just playing things, but actually not only playing things, but showing people how to do things. What was it that was making you have a feel to kind of want to just do more than just say, okay, this is what I have, but actually be like, hey, this is what I can help you do as well?
Man, it was interesting. I'm glad you asked that, because before YouTube, it was interesting trying to find information about music production. So like when I was in high school, I always wanted to do music production, and I just didn't know what equipment to get. I didn't know where to go to get stuff. Like I was just kind of clueless. I just knew, like, I knew what I heard, and I understood like that's making beats, that's music production, but I didn't know what to do. So there was a period of time where there was like a few different like little videos out there. Like I remember there was this one Alchemist video that was floating around, and he was like at NYU and stuff, and he was playing his stuff or whatever, and I would get all hyped about that. I was like, oh my god, okay. So that was one of my first glimpses into what I needed to get. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And then I saw like these guys, Sample Kings. They had their tutorial videos.
Yeah, they had a whole VHS cassette series that you could buy. Yeah, I remember that.
Wow.
They had it for the VS 1680. They had it for. They had the game on Smash at that point.
Yes, they had everything. And I just remember this one video of like that dude Doc, and he had like the SP1200, and he was showing how the multi-pitch worked on there. And when I saw him and the way he explained it, and it just like, it was like a 15 or 30-second clip, but it explained so much to me about what sampling was and how like sound could be manipulated in the sampler. And that was like, I knew once that moment hit for me, it was like that was the spark that really changed the game for me. And like that really inspired me to want to have that same spark in other producers. Like I said, if somebody can influenced me that much in 15 seconds. Imagine what I could do if I just like release things that I understand at a certain point and just try to help other people. So I always wanted to be helpful to other guys because I knew where I came from and I knew how hard it was for me when I was starting.
Yeah, I'll tell you, man. I actually really remember those Sample Kings videos too. Like just you mentioning that like really is a major throwback because I remember when I had the VS1680 hard disk recorder, and that was like that thing was like eye-opening to me at the time because I've been using like DPS-12s and lots of other little hard disk recorders, but that thing was awesome. But then I got their video on it, and I was just like, oh, wow, like, these guys, like, know what they're doing, and they're actually sharing some info, which, if you recall at that time, that was kind of almost taboo. It was like a bad thing to share your information. So, and then it was like, certain people would come out here and there, and they would share a little bit of info. So, like, I totally identify with the idea that, like, you wanted to share that information, and it's like, it was a real paradigm shift for the whole hip-hop community at that time as far as we went from ripping off and covering labels on records to, hey, here's how you can do it, like whether you're on the same block as me or whether you're out in the suburbs or wherever you are, you know what I mean, like I'm gonna show you what's going on. Now with the F major stuff.
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in and say the same thing because I remember Justin from back on MPC forums back in like '06 or so. So like back then, and I always wanted to ask him like, what's the F major all about? Is that like just your favorite key signature, or is that what you learned in? I always wanted to know about that,
man. You know what, that question, okay, so initially when I came out, I was under the alias Focus Master, actually. I was going by FM Productions. So what was happening at the time was like when I was starting to like meet people and stuff, I ran into some folks that were linked up to producer Focus. Sure you guys are familiar with that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yep.
So it got kind of weird because it was like, okay, you got Focus and you got Focus Master, and I was like, okay, I don't want to detach from the FM Productions brand. So I was thinking, okay, how can I maintain FM Productions and still have something that still makes sense for me? So I changed the name to F Major. It was like the idea was that it was Funk Major because I'm a kind of a funky guy.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with the key signature.
It's not the key signature.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Man, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's an odd key signature.
Right. Especially for hip hop.
Yeah. So, in dealing with the whole concept of basically, so you're going down this path of you've been doing music and then you're also sound designing, and the two are kind of colliding as your career is moving forward. When did Altruist.com start, and what is that all about?
So yeah, Altruist came about around 2008. That's when I kind of had the idea to move in that direction because I felt like FM Productions, that was just more like this guy that sold West Coast beats. That's what it was. But when I started considering the impact that I could have as far as like helping people to explore music production more, it kind of made me feel like it's a great thing to be able to share things that will influence the next generation. And I don't think that everything has to be such a secret or like this. How like money can really keep people out of certain things, like the software thing kind of leveled the playing field because everybody could have access to it, and I feel like information was the other thing that really leveled the playing field. And I feel like there's certain information that really spark creativity without giving away the whole game, and my intention was not to give away the whole game, but just to spark enough creativity to get people to think a certain way and not be so much just taking everything as as is. So Altruist Productions was my way of saying I want to put my own or sacrifice my own, I guess, my own wisdom and knowledge for the greater good of everybody else that could benefit from it.
Definitely.
And you know, that's what I've aimed to do, is try to just, you know, give things away that I feel like could really change people's perspective and maybe change their life as far as music production goes.
Yeah, definitely, man. And real quick, like that's the whole feeling of really everything you do, right? Because, you know, when I look at the old F major stuff, like Ken said, you get that vibe, like, man, you know, you're real helpful, and at the same time, you know, you're showing us what you're doing, and it's hardcore. It's that real hip hop, you know, that good stuff, that head nod and stuff. You know what I mean? And at the same time, like you said, you're giving the people, like especially some of those newer cats, and even some seasoned guys, like that don't really, you know, that maybe don't know this or that. You know, there's stuff in there for everybody. So it seems like that's what you're all about, and with the recent videos too, it's like that is really prevalent in the more recent stuff you're doing as well.
Man, yeah, I mean, I really appreciate that, man. But you know, the thing is, I went through a phase where I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep doing that, because I felt like, you know, when Machine came out, things got a little bit murky for me, because, you know, I did the Machine videos, and then it kind of became about, like, you know, Machine tutorials, and I always wanted to be more open-minded and, like, help people to explore, like, all aspects of sound and music production. So, you know, I took a break for a while just to clear my thoughts and get a new perspective on it. So, like, the new videos that I've been doing really have a different perspective now, because it's not just about focusing on, like, one piece of equipment or anything like that. It's really, I'm really talking about a lot of philosophical things now, and just conceptual stuff, just to spark people's minds, because I felt like I was seeing a lot of people getting lost in just buying things and not really exploring them. So I wanted to get people thinking again. So that's why the new videos kind of have this undertone that you're talking about.
Right. And I don't know if you've read the book Making Music. Have you read? Have you had a chance to check that out? It's a
No.
I want to say Cycling 74, or is it is that it, Ken? I don't know if you. It's on the Ableton website.
Read it. I think I heard it. I believe it is.
Okay, but anyway, that book, it's a trip, because I'm reading through it now, and it's crazy because the timing of your videos, and you haven't read that book, but the timing of your videos in that book, they really correspond, because it's like more of a philosophy instead of oh, this piece of gear or that piece of gear. It's more like, you know, the whole of music production, electronic music production, you know. So it's really interesting to see the way you're doing things, and like I said, some of the information I've been reading in that book, it's more of the philosophy of music production. It's really good to see somebody like yourself bringing that to the table, especially for urban music producers. So yeah, man, good stuff.
Man, thank you. Yeah, I need to check that book out, by the way. I saw that on the Ableton Live website, but I never had a chance to check it, so that sounds like a good read. Sure.
Yeah.
So with the projects that you've been working on lately, are you applying a lot of the techniques that you're taking from, like, the Native Instruments projects that you've done over the past 4 or 5 years, and taking those and kind of gleaning knowledge from that as far as what works, what doesn't work, and then kind of trying to put that into a way that the average beat maker is going to be able to utilize and kind of work with?
So, I mean, it's interesting you say that. I think to some degree I can say, yeah, some of it is from my experience with Native Instruments, but I would say a lot of it is, you know, the stuff that I've explored outside of Native Instruments. So, for example, like the whole, you know, I just did a video about sampling synths. And that was something that I started doing, like, well before I got to Native Instruments. I was in the process of trying to convert my my Yamaha Motif and a couple of my other synths into EXS libraries around 2006, 2007. So I got a lot of experience doing that sort of thing, and, you know, that's one of the things that definitely helped me in my work at Native Instruments later on, because we used a lot of those techniques that I was using back then in the factory content and stuff that I've created. However, as I've been exploring my music production more and just being more open, I realized that some of the stuff that I do in the sound design world can really impact how I produce as well. So I've been just like taking those things that I find that are useful and just really applying it in a music production context now, because I think just organizationally, a lot of the things that I have learned through Native Instruments and sound design in general have helped me to become a lot more organized in my approach. So that's what I'm trying to express some of those things without necessarily talking about Native Instruments stuff, but just really talking about this. These are things or concepts that can help you regardless of what you use.
Yeah, I would say another thing about the site, and this is kind of like off of that, but it seems to be arranged pretty nicely, the way you have everything laid out. How are you going about deciding between what you're going to keep as more video content that you're kind of directly conveying to people versus like written articles, things like that?
That's a good question. So initially, I was going to do a lot more of the written articles, because I felt like some things could be better expressed in written form. I don't find myself to be like the greatest speaker ever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like my written ability is much stronger. However, I feel like now in this time, I have an ability to like do a lot longer videos first of all, because like when I first started doing YouTube, it was kind of like this 10-minute limit, and if you notice, some of my videos now are kind of going over that 10-minute limit, but because we don't have that anymore, it just opened it up for me to just say, okay, I can just talk freely, and however long it takes for me to convey the idea, that's just what it is. And I try to keep it edited to a point where it's not like a lot of filler or whatever, but at the same time, I know that now YouTube has been a lot more gracious about also allow me to get feedback and stuff, so I feel like it's a better place for me to communicate certain ideas than the written form at this point. So that's why you're seeing a lot more videos from me now as opposed to more written stuff.
Well, you're doing a lot of I'm trying to think of the right term for them. I guess they're not necessarily courses, but they're more like seminars for like machine. And you're dealing with a crowd, a lot of presentations, AC3, stuff like that, where you're going out and you're actually talking to producers. And has that really affected the way that you're doing your videos and affected the way that you're approaching teaching people?
Yeah, I would say so, because when you're out in front of people and you can kind of when you get that ability to have to respond to people's like off the cuff questions, it kind of keeps you on your toes a bit, but it also just freed me in terms of my thinking, because like, for example, when you go with like this set curriculum and things, like sometimes you can get caught up in only thinking about what you want to teach and not really looking at what people are there to actually get out of it. So now, like, as I've been in front of people more and I've been able to just receive a lot more like direct feedback, it's just allowed me to be more open to feedback on my channel in general. So like some of the videos now, I'm taking questions from people directly and saying, okay, let me turn that into a whole topic that we can discuss now, because I feel like if anything, people are gonna take what they take from you, whatever you have to say. But I think if you can respond to at least one person directly, that's one person that you can affect in a more substantial way. So I try to look at individuals that are giving feedback and try to directly go at their heart, because that's the person that's going to like be the evangelist for your message at the end of the day.
Mm. So one thing that I was really thinking about is the fact that, Justin, I don't know if you know this, but you're kind of a busy guy. You got a lot going on. There's a lot of projects in the works constantly. I know this, and I'm sure you know this, But what I'm wondering is how are you balancing the two? Like, what is it that makes you say, okay, well, you know what, this week I can go ahead and do this, or, you know, I don't know how I'm going to find the time to keep this going.
That, you know, that's a great question, man. I struggled with that for a while, to be honest with you. So, you know, I think one of the biggest parts that has helped me is just having a vision, you know. And I think before I was just kind of doing it and trying to see what would happen, but now I really have a vision for what it should be and who it's going to speak to. So that's helped to motivate me a lot. And,
Nice.
you know, I just try to now just make every moment count, man. You know, like, you have a lot of technology at your disposal now in this age, and I feel like if you use it correctly, you can get so much stuff done. Like, I was working on an ebook, and I did most of my ebook through dictation on my phone. You know what I mean? Like, all my ideas for my videos are dictations into my phone that I'm just pretty much, you know, going over in the video form. But I try to just get a lot of stuff done in random times, man. Like, I could be, you know, anywhere. Like, if I'm on the train, I'm writing stuff, getting ideas, and that really helps to keep me going, so I don't feel like overstretched with all the things that I'm doing. Because, like you said, it is a lot, and I have a lot of stuff on my mind. But I found that if you write stuff down, it can really help you to realize things much more than having it in your mind.
That's man, that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah, that's good. Valuable information right there.
Now, let me just ask. So, as you're working on projects, are there any times when you're working on a specific project and, you know, a topic comes up or a problem or something comes up as you're working on the project, and that sparks you to jump right into, okay, well, you know what, this week I'm going to do something on that, or is there a parity there? You know, is it crossing across in that way?
To some degree, so what I do at Native Instruments is kind of like sound content management. So a lot of times that's not so much on the creative side of things. I feel like it can be, but the focus is more technical. So I try not to involve that so much into what I'm doing, but like, as I'm working on music on my own, this is when a lot of the ideas come up, because I really take from what I'm doing in my own studio. Because I really, when I do my videos, I want to make sure that people understand this is stuff that I'm really using and it's really helping me creatively. But so when I find something that was like, oh, that's a cool way of looking at it, I'll write it down, and then I'll start to like go off into a whole tangent about that and just write a lot. So, because I'm constantly writing, man. That's one of the things that has helped me a lot now. Is just I'm constantly writing everything, any ideas that I find, or any kind of techniques that I found that were helpful. I'll write it down, and then I just kind of determine whether I'm going to share it and how I'm going to share it. Because you know, I think some things require a lot more of a I guess a structured approach to teaching. So I try to take the things that could be received in, you know, a 10 to 15 minute conversation well.
Yeah. The other thing that I was wondering about is how does it affect you musically? So your passion is obviously making music. You wouldn't be doing that in your spare time when you work dealing with music as well if you didn't have a passion for it. How much does that kind of weigh on you when you're thinking, you know what, I just got home from work listening to sounds all day, trying to organize these files, this and that. Do you still approach music creation in the same way you did 15 years ago, or do you find that you have to kind of budget your time differently? Like, how does it affect you?
Man, that's a great question. You know, before I was doing sound design for my primary job, I was doing a lot of random other stuff, and when I would get home, music would kind of be more of this creative outlet for me. And I would say it still is, but I would say in a different way now, because, like you said, after doing, 8, 10-hour days of sound design, listening to sounds, editing sounds and whatnot, I still want to be creative, but I look for different things that can spark creativity. So, a lot of people are wondering, like, why is this dude still, like, using some of this old hardware and stuff like that? And that's one of the reasons why I do it, because, like, I have to keep my mind engaged, and at the same time I need to have things that are fresh for me. So after 8 hours of, say, looking at machine, I've done my work on machine for the day, so I'm looking for something else now, you know what I mean? So that's one of the things that's helped me, is just looking at different things that can help to spark creativity, because like you said, I am passionate about what I do. I love making music. It's just that, I like to explore as well, so I try to keep an open mind. I'm always looking for new ways to up the ante on sound and just up the ante on creativity in general, man.
Right. And I got a quick question for you, because I know you just did a little event a couple weeks ago with a couple of guys, and I was looking at the roster and checked out some of those guys, man, and man, a lot of fresh, abstract, creative cats at that event, man, and as well as yourself, and so my question is, like, as far as music production and hip hop, and maybe even, I know it's hard to, like, really label yourself, but back in the day, I know you more for, like, that West Coast funk, which you still really bring, man, and it's dope. Where would you say you're at now? Would you say you're still, if you had to label yourself? I know we really don't like using labels, but where would you say you're at as far as that goes? And then also, where do you see, like, the modern producer, like, being at that event? What do you see, like, as far as hip hop production, and where do you see that whole scene kind of going?
Right. Yeah. I mean, so at that event, there was, like, such a diverse crowd of producers there. I would say people were doing, everything from, like, mainstream top 40 urban music all the way to just, like, straight boom bap stuff. And I'm kind of like, I like hip hop, man. So, I have a lot of influences, but I like all kinds of hip hop. I'm not just, like, strictly about the West Coast sound. I think that's kind of, like, specific to my brand, because I've done a lot of West Coast. I've worked with a lot of West Coast acts, just being out here and just growing up in that environment. I think that's always going to be a part of my sound. But when I look at the West Coast and I look at just the climate and just the different influences out here, there's so much, man. It's just like you have the jazz cats out here, guys like Terrace Martin, Thundercat, Ronald Bruner. These guys, I grew up with a lot of these guys, you know what I'm saying? Like, I went to school with Thundercat and Ronald Bruner, his brother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, like, Ronald Bruner was my best friend in elementary, so, we were really close. So, I mean, just having all these different influences and knowing that, I think the West Coast has kind of been just a place where a lot of different cultures and different music scenes have come together and, like, really been able to, like, shape music in general. I think we've been very influential. So I would say I'm kind of just influenced by everything. You know what I mean? I get down with the whole, the brain feeder cast. I get down with, of course, the West Coast hip hop guys. But I listen to everything, man. So I try to keep an open ear. Whatever sounds good and whatever sounds like it's from the soul, I kind of try to take something from it. So I think I'm more of a melting pot as far as the production goes, but it's still soulful and funky. That's why I try to categorize myself soulful and funky.
Gotcha.
I got a question as far as something a little bit more concerning for us old heads. So as you're working, you're really burning the candle at both ends, by working during the day doing audio and doing sound at night, and your music and whatnot. What are some things that you do to kind of preserve your hearing, and do you think about that much?
Oh boy,
you can tell it's a fellow sound designer who's asking this question.
Absolutely. So I had some issues some years back where I had to really check myself and my workflow, because I started getting into, like, loud everything. Everything had to be loud. And there was a point where I started to feel like, you know, this loud thing is kind of not only does it affect the perception of sound, but obviously there's this whole hearing damage thing, and I started to reevaluate my approach to loud. So one of the things I really have done is just gotten accustomed to working more at very low levels. And I practice that a lot now, because that's been like a major transitional thing for me, just being disciplined to listen to things low and listen for how impactful sound is at low levels, because now I see there's kind of like a trick to it in a way. It's like if the sound is impactful at low levels, then I don't have to worry so much about it at a loud level, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's just, I think part of it is maturing and just understanding the craft a bit more, but also, yeah, like you said, trying to preserve things, because after 8-10 hours, fatigue sets in, man, and you start to, things start to get very blurred. And I value my ears. I talk to guys all the time. Like, there's I don't know if you guys saw it, but there's like this interview online where they interview all the guys that worked on the Compton record, and they were in one section they were talking about how loud Dr. Dre monitors. They were saying, like, he monitors so loud that it hits your soul, and like your teeth are shattering and stuff. And this is something I heard from a lot of people that I know that work with him as well. And I kind of start to think, maybe, there's some hearing loss there, So I'm wondering, like, if you continue on that path, at some point you won't be able to do what you do by yourself. So I want to be able to still function on my own and not have to have, like, 30 people to dictate what the sound is going to be.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Now, on that same note, let me just ask, and this is more for the young heads, just because I know what I've been through, and I know what some of the other heads on here have been through. But let's talk about, like, real early, like when you were first getting into production and whatnot. Were you doing a lot of live shows? Did you get out there, and were you out there with big PA systems blaring in your face? Did you have to deal with that at all?
So yeah, from my end, I've always been the home studio guy. I'm not like I don't do any type of like live performances. So that's not really my background. At best, I did some live stuff for like just recording bands and whatnot, like some jazz bands. But in those cases, it wasn't so much this like blaring sound. So I never really had to deal with that part. But I've always been just protective in general at events, because I've definitely come home from events and I'm ringing for like a day, and that's scary to me. So
absolutely.
Just now, I take precautions. I know if I'm going to go to an event, I have to have some type of, in-ear situation where I can protect my hearing, because it's dangerous, man. People don't realize how loud stuff is until you get home and you still hear the stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I just think that in general, it's a real, like, I try to stress it as often as I can, because it's something where it's like, oh, well, these old guys talk about this, and it's like, oh, it's not a big deal, until it's a big deal. You're like,
exactly.
I really wish I did that. And like,
yeah.
It's almost like wearing a seatbelt. It might be a little bit inconvenient right now, but after you're in an accident, you'll sure be happy that you had it.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
That's why I kind of like to bring that stuff up.
You're right, man. I mean, I've read so much about other musicians that have substantial hearing loss, and it's kind of scary to me, because I can only imagine how that impacts just your whole approach to music once you stop being able to hear certain things. So, yeah, that's one thing I definitely keep in mind at all times.
Absolutely. So we're getting ready to close out, and before we do, I just want to mention a couple of different things. So there's Ultrawist Productions, which is ultrawist.com. That's where you can go. You can find videos. You got pretty much everything that you need that's F major related, Ultrawist, Justin Myracks related. all in one beautiful spot. Seems to be laid out really well. I'm gonna do another screen share so I can show people what it is exactly that you have going on up here. And so let me pop this over here. Here we go. And you can see that you can sign up for a newsletter. I always recommend that people sign up for these newsletters. Usually sites like this aren't spam happy. Are you spam happy?
Absolutely not, man. I try to keep it straight to the point. You know, I don't do it every week or anything like that. I just, when I have something important to say, you'll hear from me, and I try to keep it really cool, man. So no spam from this side.
Absolutely. So I highly recommend going over, checking it out. It's obviously a highly respected source, somebody that you can actually trust on here, as opposed to a nameless face on the internet who, you know, is going to be telling you something completely wrong. You know, I know Justin. Justin is not the kind of guy to lie to you. So, you know, thank goodness for that, because, you know, finding good content on the web these days, it's like, you know, it can be a crapshoot, but this is actually a valid source. Somebody who's not looking just for a simple buck, but he's actually looking to spread some knowledge to you. So that's, I mean, that's pretty important if you ask me, and everybody should be grateful for that opportunity to check it out. So don't squander that opportunity.
And if I can jump in, if I can jump in and say, good content for even those guys that feel like they're seasoned and like they know, you know, everything, or like they've heard it all, and just real good content for, you know, those guys that have been doing it for a while as well. So.
And I'm a big fan of the perspective posts. You know what I mean? Because some of us might have been doing things equally long, or some person longer than another person, whatever. But realistically, our life experiences are different. The way that Justin approaches a hardware synth might be different the way that I approach it, or different the way that Mike does. You know, so these perspective things can actually really kind of open your thinking to, well, maybe I should try this, and maybe that'll, you know, creatively change me or workflow change me, and that can be a great thing. So I know that in the past few years, just talking with Justin and the way that he does things, I know that I've changed a lot of ways that I approach projects, and it's helped me. So I highly recommend it.
Ken, has he helped you with slowing down on those gear purchases at all?
You know what about that? If you look, in all honesty, if you look at Justin's setup, it's really not that extravagant. He's got some nice choice gear in there, but it's not all that extravagant, and it doesn't really need to be. One, because he has a luxury of having an office where he can touch things. But, you know, he's a guy. He's a keys player. He's an actual instrumentalist who likes to craft music, and you know, he uses what he enjoys, and he, you know, for instance, he has a promo picture that I saw. He held up an Ultranova in that, and I said, see, he's using what works. That's the lightest synthesizer in his studio. Right. So it's all about using what works for you.
Yeah, I couldn't hold up the Rhodes in the picture, you know. So.
But yeah, like in all honesty, no, I talked to him, and he's one of those guys that you can see, like, he has a heart for some older, like the older MPCs and like an older workflow, even though he has access to everything new that you could possibly have. You know, it's sometimes you just want to keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean? You just want to keep that, you know, what works for you and make it happen, and then stay inspired. You know, and I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Well, that's why I had to mess with you and pull your chain a little bit. You're
well, yeah, because I'm just, my music is terrible, and that's why I buy all this to make up for it.
Well, no, you're sitting in like a cockpit over there, man.
Yeah, I'm really impressed by the setup, Ken, man. I was like, what spaceship are you on right now?
This is all because a lot of my, I would say 75% of my sound design happens in-house. So,
there you go.
There you go. Yes. And I'm sure if Justin had to deal with the same kind of scenario, he would be doing that. But
absolutely.
Yeah, otherwise you'd be seeing me recording the show from warehouses where I'm recording concrete blocks, and nobody wants to see that show. Yeah, so I just wanted to say again, thank you to Justin for coming on here. I want to pass it over to Mike because he's been pretty silent and hanging out in Germany. So I want to pass it over to Mike real quick. Is there anything you wanted to add or talk about
Yeah.
before?
I'm sorry for the silence, but it's really late here and I'm tired.
I had a
Yeah,
feeling.
really, really interesting show. I'm following Justin also for quite some years, and it's really good to meet you almost in person. Yeah, I took a little break from the YouTube and video thing. I'm still digging into new synthesizers, thinking about a little bit a lot of new tutorials. Also, because we had the topic here in the show, I'm also gonna make a video about optimizing your time management, because I know a lot of us, we have families, we have jobs, we have side jobs, and a lot of people I know wish they had more time for music. And this is actually a topic I have at my main job as a web designer to deal with a lot. So there are quite some techniques that work out for me pretty good, and I'm going to make a video about that. Yeah, also been doing a lot of testing at the moment, and yeah. So there's new stuff coming. I can't tell exactly when there will be new videos, but keep subscribing and you will be noticed.
And I'll toss it over to Bryce. What have you been working on over there? I mean, I know that you've been grinding away making a lot of music. So
Yeah. And I did some stuff with Cold Busted, not, but that was probably about a month ago. So that was the last thing I've really done. But doing a lot of testing as well, like some stuff with Mike. Doing some testing, and that's been taking up a lot of time because I'm really kind of diving in deep on that stuff because there's some real good stuff going on. But other than that, man, just hanging out with the family, you know, making music just is, like Justin said earlier, one of my like decompression things. When I get home, I just love to decompress and you know, get into a creative zone, you know. So not much really going on with me, man. I'm just hanging out. So
just playing with the modular.
Man,
yeah.
The joints are crazy, man. I just
man,
tell you,
thank
the
you.
joints are amazing.
You know what? That's another thing. I just want to say this because it is a completely shameless plug. But dude, if people on here enjoy good hip hop, go on to Upright's SoundCloud because it is all fantastic hip hop.
Oh man,
so,
thank you.
Like,
I
say that like as not just a friend but as a fan. Like
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
You know, and I'll also throw it out to B-Boy Tech Report too. Like a lot of the stuff that I've been listening to lately is Upright and B-Boy Tech Report, and like they're killing it. So I'm a big fan of that stuff. So I highly recommend checking it out.
I gotta say, I don't know much people like Bryce who use their modulars in such a melodic way. And turning them in such, you know, most of the modular guys you see out there, they're just doing weird noises and stuff like that. But this is really some mellow vibe with the sounds. I really like that.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Definitely. So definitely check that stuff out. Go on to the SoundCloud, check it out. On my end, I've been working on a few things I can't talk about just yet. A few things I can. So I will say that there is a nice sale that we have going on over at themachinewarehouse.com. Also keep an eye out because we're going to be opening up a new website in the future that's going to be housing all the VSTs and contact libraries and other things that I can't talk about yet that we are working on. And I'm very, very excited to kind of get this stuff out to people. So definitely check that out. I've got a massive Eurorack modular tutorial course that's coming out soon. So keep an eye out. I'm not going to say where it's landing just yet. The deal's already done, but I want to wait until it's a little bit more fleshed out, and then I'll drop that. But if you're thinking about getting into Eurorack modular, you might want to wait just a little bit because this is going to be an all-encompassing course that will teach you everything you need to know. On top of that, I would just say I'm just diving into gear and working on new sounds and trying to come up with interesting things that people don't have yet as far as on their sonic palette. So hopefully I can keep providing things that people will keep enjoying. That's really what I care about. So and try to get outside once in a while. I have not. I haven't done anything this summer but work. So I'm dying to like go fishing or do something. You know. I'll be in Mexico soon. So yes. But
Nice.
anyway. So I just want to say again, thank you to Altruist for coming on here. Excellent guest, and please, please, please go check out his website. This is Flux of fluxwithit.com, machinewarehouse.com, and the Producers Hangout, saying thank you again. Episode 33 is finished. Thank you.
Peace.
Peace out.
Peace.